Who wants a guided tour?
We do.
Just you, madam. Come on in then. Come on in, squeeze in, ladies and gents. Come in close, guys. Come in close, closer, 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 closer. Get to know each other, be friends. We're going to be with each other for the next 10 hours. Come on, squeeze in, guys. Come right away in. Come in, don't be shy. There's plenty of space on this side. Come round. Right, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And welcome to Her Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress, the Tower of London. My name's Shady, and I'm one of 37 yeoman warders who live and work here inside the Tower of London. We're called yeoman warders, but you might know us better by our nicknames of Beefeaters. Now, for the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to be your guide. Together, we're all going to walk through the tower. I'm going to point out some of the more historic buildings. You guys all get to look at them, and I tell you about their fascinating history. Happy?
Happy.
Yes.
Good, okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you know nothing about the Tower of London, our story, we've got to go back into the mists of time to the year 1066, when William, Duke of Normandy, better known as William the Conqueror, he just defeated the Saxon King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. And on Christmas Day of that very same year, he was crowned King of England. Now, despite this, it took him another 12 years to conquer the English people, because unsurprisingly, they didn't really take too kindly to Norman domination. Now, William, he needed to find a location to build a fortress to impress and overawe the rebellious Londoners. And he chose this site on the east of the city where an old Roman fort once stood. Now, in the year 1078, he gave orders for the building of his royal palace and fortress. It was the first of its kind anywhere in England. His palace later became known as the White Tower. The White Tower is the building that sits in the very centre and the heart of our fortress. We'll see that later during our tour. Over the next 200 years, though, successive monarchs, they were to add and improve to the defences of the tower till finally it became what we see today. Now, throughout the 900 years or so that the tower's been standing on this site, it's been used for lots of different reasons. Now, William the Conqueror, he had the tower built as his royal palace and residence. It was used as a royal residence right up until the year 1603, when King James I was the last monarch to use it as such. Although the tower no longer remains a royal residence today, it does still hold the status of being a royal palace and fortress. Now, the crown jewels and the royal regalia, they've been housed here since the year 1303. Excuse me. It's also been a royal mint. Many of the coins of the realm were designed and minted here inside these walls. The Royal Observatory, that used to be housed here until it moved downriver to Greenwich in the 17th century, where it still stands today. It's been an armoury for the storage of weapons and warlike equipment. It's also been used to hold court records belonging to the kings and queens of this realm. However, they moved in the 19th century to form the Public Records Office. One of its most unusual uses has been that of a royal menagerie or zoo, and lots of exotic animals were kept here. They were gifts to the kings and queens from foreign dignitaries, but again, they moved in the 19th century up to Regent's Park to form what we now know as the world-famous London Zoo. Lastly, probably its most infamous use, which most of you good people will know it as, would have been as a state prison. And many famous military, political and religious prisoners were kept here. And sadly, some of them were to lose their lives to the executioner's axe on the public execution site up on Tower Hill. And also, no less than 3 Queens of England were to lose their lives inside the tower on our private execution site on Tower Green. Again, another spot we're going to see later during our tour. Now, to this point, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to draw your attention to that magnificent building that stands up on Tower Hill. And I'm not referring to that horrible glass pointed thing. I refer to the one over to its right, the large white building that has the statues inside it. You can just see the top of it from here. Now, that building, ladies and gentlemen, is known as number 10 Trinity Square. It used to be the home of the Port of London Authority, who still to this day control all the shipping that moves up and down the River Thames. And as such, that building, ladies and gentlemen, has got absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the tower. But I think it's beautiful and I wanted you to look at it. Okay? Now, there is a reason I'm pointing it out to you. Just in front of that building, you can't see it from here, but just in front of it, there are some gardens. They're known as Trinity Square Gardens. Now, if you get time later on, once you've finished visiting the tower, walk past our ticket offices, cross over the main road, spend a few moments in Trinity Square Gardens. And while you're in there, look for a bronze plaque that lies in the floor, because that bronze plaque has got everything to do with the tower, because it marks the site of the public execution site. And no less than 75 men of noble birth sadly, were to lose their lives to the executioner's axe just up there on Tower Hill. Now, the first man to lose his life up there was a man by the name of Simon Sudbury. He was the Archbishop of Canterbury. He was murdered in the year 1381 at the hands of peasants for daring to impose higher taxes on the people of England. Hear, hear. That's what I say to that one. 7 years later, in 1388, the first legal beheading took place up there. Another Simon, this time though, a man by the name of Simon de Burley. He was a Knight of the Garter. And by sheer coincidence, in 1747, when the last execution took place up on Tower Hill, another Simon. This time though, a man by the name of Simon Fraser, the Lord Lovat. He was an 80-year-old Scottish lord who had sided with Bonnie Prince Charlie in the failed Jacobite rebellion in the year 1745. Now, ladies and gentlemen, picture the scene if you can on the day of that execution. The prisoner, he would have been escorted through the tower by the Beefeaters up as far as the Bulwark Gates. And those gates were situated roughly where our ticket offices are today. At that point, he'd have been handed over to the Sheriff of London, who'd have ensured safe passage through the vast crowds of people who had turned up that day to witness the execution. They would have made their way up to the site of the scaffold, a 10-foot high wooden platform. There, the prisoner would climb the steps to come face to face with his executioner for the first time. After saying a few words of forgiveness to the man, and then saying a few words, what was I talking about? Do you know what? I do this tour about 3 times a day, 3 times a week, and every now and again I'll just forget what I'm talking about. So, right, excuse me for that. Right, what were we talking about? Executions, weren't we?
The sheriff.
Stop laughing, madam. Right, now, like I say, he would face his executioner for the first time. And at that point, he would kneel down, say a short prayer, and place his neck onto a block of oak. The executioner's axe would then come crashing down. Whack, severing the head from the body. The executioner, he would lean forward, pick up the still bleeding head, hold it high and cry, "Behold, the head of a traitor! So die all traitors! God save the king!" And the crowds would cheer.
Yay!
Not good enough. There's people here not joining in. I can see who you are. Right, listen, it's an interactive tour. You have to join in, okay? Right, we're doing that one again. "Behold, the head of a traitor!" So hang on. We haven't got to the important part yet. "So die all traitors. God save the king."
Yay!
There you go, brilliant. We're all royalists again. Now, the head would then have been placed on a soldier's pike, paraded down through the old streets of London, down to the old London Bridge. There, the heads would have been placed as a warning to any would-be traitors. A headless corpse, that would have been thrown on a cart, wheeled back into the tower and buried inside in the Chapel Royal of St Peter ad Vincula. Now, that's a spot very close to where our tour is going to finish today. Right, now very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move off from here. We're going to start making our way inside the tower. We're actually going to follow the trail of that headless corpse as it made its final journey inside before being laid to rest inside our church. So, ladies and gentlemen, can I please ask you just to clear a path for me there, please, so I can squeeze through and get to the front. What we're going to do now, ladies and gents, we're going to go up the ramp, we're going to turn left, we're going to go through the Bywood Tower, and I'm now going to take you to the outer ward of the Tower of London. Let's